Welcome to the podcast PUNKT.UA with Tinka
and Vadym. This podcast is dedicated to Ukrainian studies.
We conduct interviews with scholars from the UNDIPUS project,
which stands for Undisciplined Pluralizing Ukrainian Studies, Understanding the War in Ukraine.
Join us on the PUNKT.UA podcast.
And today we will talk with Associate Professor Martin Henzelmann. Martin Henzelmann is an associate professor in the field of Slavic linguistics. Currently, he works as a researcher at the Institute for Slavic Studies at the University of Greifswald, and he lectures at the Friedrich Schiller University in Jena. He completed his doctorate thesis on the development of Slavic minority languages before earning habilitations, a postdoctorate qualification higher than PhD with lecture obligation. Martin has worked at different German universities. He has realized guest teaching activities at various European universities, for instance as a semester lecturer at the Charles University in Prague in Czech Republic, within the framework of the German Academic Exchange Service. Moreover, he gained profound teaching and research experience in several countries, such as Poland, Bulgaria, or Serbia. In the field of Slavic linguistics, he focuses on the development of minority languages and their representation in society. This is also the background of for his participation in the UNDIPUS project, in which he is working on minority issues in the historical region of Bessarabia, the southwesternmost corner of Ukraine and neighboring Moldova. Hello, Martin.
Hello.
Hello, also from my side.
Hello,
Martin.
thank you for the introduction.
Thank you to being with us today. So, let's start with the first question. I want to ask you about your participation in UNDIPUS project. Why did you decide to join this project, and what is your main topic within this project?
Well, thank you. I would say I have some experience in the field of Slavic minority languages. And of course, Ukraine is a very interesting field in this context. First of all, we would bear in mind that languages in Ukraine are often associated with the occurrence of Ukrainian and Russian. But of course, it is known that there are more languages, smaller languages, but they are definitely not in the center of public attention. So this is exactly my approach. I ask what role smaller languages play in Ukraine, how they develop under the current conditions, and above all, what interferences there are with the situation in the Republic of Moldova. Second, I would say that the historical region of Bessarabia, which I'm particularly interested in, is largely located on the territory of today's Republic of Moldova. Only the southern part is politically in both Moldova and Ukraine, and both the ethnic and linguistic composition is very similar. So this southern part on both sides of the Moldovan-Ukrainian border is also called Budjak, where numerous ethnic and linguistic minorities live. And to this day, people preserve their local languages and try to keep their cultural independence to different degrees. So in this context, it is of course important to observe that the language policy in Ukraine and Moldova is indeed different in both countries. For example, it is well known that the Ukrainian legislation attempts to enhance the status of Ukrainian in the form of various regulations, while at the same time lowering the status of Russian language. And if we, of course, disregard Yanukovych's presidency, of course. And however, because this cannot be, it cannot be spelled out that directly, but we can only see it between the lines and, of course, in the implementation of laws. So the minority languages are also affected by these language laws. And for example, the Ukrainian government intends, for example, that Ukrainian will replace Russian as the lingua franca of interethnic communication, and in the Republic of Moldova the situation is somewhat different, I would say, as both the ethnic and linguistic composition of the country differs from Ukraine with regard to the whole situation of the country. And in Moldova there are also laws governing the use of different languages, but in a nutshell these are not that strictly designed for the state language, and on contrary they propagate multilingualism. All in all, I would say that it's important to observe how different ethnic and national groups in both countries sees the situation themselves, and I think it is important to document and to evaluate this situation.
How do you plan to contribute to the scope of the UNDIPUS project? So what are your main research questions and what are the objectives of your subprojects?
Well, in principle, my research question arises from the complex situation I have just mentioned. It is about different languages and their status in society, the legal and formal possibilities of using different languages, and of course the question of how the group itself is satisfied with the situation, or whether they feel a need for improvement, for any improvement or maintenance of language. So let's take the most important minority groups living in the region of Budjak and their languages. For example, there are the Gagauz people, who are a Turkic-speaking Christian Orthodox people. In the Republic of Moldova, they have their own autonomous region and their own institutions, such as a university, and they use their language. And they are also the largest group in this region, followed by the Bulgarians, who also have numerous educational institutions, and there are some Albanians also on the Ukrainian side. And the question is now how these individual groups will align themselves in the course of development of both states. So the idea I am navigating in my sub-project focuses on the question of what opportunities are available to linguistic minorities in practice. I'm also interested in how they evaluate the language debate in Ukraine and what impact this debate has on their attitudes towards their mother tongue, or whether it affects their choice of language in public sphere.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Actually, I was born in Ukraine, and actually, I was born in this region, basically on which you focus in your research project. So I know personally how this region is very rich in terms of nationalities and languages. And of course, you know that in Ukraine there are strong regional differences in terms of language and cultures. But here, like in the West, sometimes it's a little known. So people don't know a lot about this situation. How do you think why it's so?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And in my opinion, this has to do with the fact that the language issue in Ukraine is first and foremost dedicated to the question of what the competitive relationship between Ukrainian and Russian is, so what consequences it has and what could be done about it, and so on. So that means that it is therefore primarily about researching the predominance of one of the two languages in different areas of Ukrainian society. And of course, this has also a certain justification, as these two languages are the most widely spoken and are also very well known, especially also in the field of Slavic studies in Germany. In contrast, languages such as Hungarian or Romanian are rarely in the foreground, and they are often only noticed when it comes to political issues that affect the respective speakers. Let's look at an example from Ukraine, which is not from that region, but which illustrates why it is not so much known, or we do not focus so much on the issue of other languages than Ukrainian and Russian. For example, Hungary and Romania complained to the Ukrainian government about the supposedly strictly formulated language laws. But little research has been carried out into the extent to which the speakers or the groups actually see added value or harm in the implementation of such language laws, or whether they consider them relevant or irrelevant at all. So we must not forget that these are languages that are official languages that in EU member states of Hungary and Romania, and they are actually still perceived to a certain extent due to their geopolitical location and the number of speakers. However, if we have a closer look to the Bujak region in the southernmost corner of Ukraine and Moldova, the situation is a little bit different because this region is very much isolated and several ethnic minorities live in a very close proximity to each other. So you can hear a different language practically in every village, but this area escapes public perception due to its isolated peripheral location.
Mm. Yeah, you said it's very interesting because this region is first of all very isolated, but the UNDIPUS project started researching the circumstances in Ukraine according to war, and actually it was to the Donbas war, which is on the other side, quite far away from Bessarabia region. But now, after full-scale invasion, maybe also this region is somehow affected by war, not only on the political level, about all these political discussions about language, but maybe also in another way. So we thought about how is now the full-scale invasion, the full-scale war affecting your work or this region and also your research work.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I would say these are two different questions, but with a very common ground. So this attack on Ukraine has, of course, a very strong impact on my research. Because at the time when war is going on in Ukraine, it is, of course, difficult to conduct field research there. It is not only due to security risks or for example, traveling there now, but also to the local population. Because I believe that it is indeed true that people over there currently have completely different concerns and that you would have to deal with the issue very sensitively. So that is the first problem in this context. And that's also why it's naturally a major obstacle that you can't just go to Ukraine and collect material as you may do it in Moldova at current time. So I'm trying to also to compensate for this by concentrating a little more on Moldova at the moment and collecting material there. So that is the question that addresses my personal work and the question how to deal with it. But of course, the other question is how this situation affects the region. And of course it is affected because you have people from these villages who need to go to the army, who need to go to the eastern part of Ukraine or to the southeastern part of Ukraine and to defend their country. So, and that is also something that is a very important point here, that many people do not belong to neither to Russian nor Ukrainian ethnic groups, but they go to the war line and defend Ukraine as their country, and they are against this invasion of the Russian forces. So that is one thing that is very also difficult in this situation, and in basically every village there is someone who is at war, who died in war, so it is very difficult for the people to overcome this situation.
Mm.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. It's really this minority issues is very important in Ukraine, and I think very few pay attention to that inside Ukraine and outside, actually. I want to ask you about your plans for the future, for example, within UNDIPUS project or maybe another projects where you're involved. Can you say more about it, please?
Yes, well, in near future, I plan to travel to Ukraine. So I hope to be able to collect some material and go to the Budjak and get a clearer picture of the situation. And I hope I will succeed to find some material apart from this difficult situation now. What I am trying to do is to get as much information as possible about different ethnic and language groups, and to see how they react, of course, not only to the political situation now, but how the language issue in Ukraine and the discussion about the use or not using Russian will affect their societies. Because we do not have to forget that, especially in this region, people belong to different ethnic and linguistic groups, and their common ground for communication is Russian language. So, and now with the school system of Ukraine and with the laws in Ukraine, it is from the official position that is trying to change it, but at the same time the war is doing something to change it, because people might not be so keen anymore to speak Russian to each other. But this is exactly a question which I am focusing on. So that is basically my idea, and to compare the situation a little bit with the Republic of Moldova.
Yeah, I have a question here. How do you collect material? Do we have a partner university in this region, or do you have personal contact?
Well, it's personal contacts to some institutions, to some scholars I know, to some people I know in this region, and I think it's the best to do it via personal connections.
Okay, but then I have another question. But it's not the first time that you're in this region, right? Or is it the first trip?
Well, I went several times there, but not in the context of the war, because we didn't have the project before the war started. So I was there before the war started, and I was, after the situation changed with this war in Ukraine, I went several times to Moldova. So, well, that was the only option. And we don't have to forget that this border in the south of Moldova was drawn artificially in the Soviet era. So it is a historical region with historical communities that have a historical common ground in a singular region. So the state border now changes only the question to which school system the pupils need to, which system they do attend, or to which state they belong, which passport holders they are. But it doesn't affect their ethnic or linguistic choice in terms of communication at home, in the village society, with grandparents, and so on.
Yeah, I want to add that as far as I understood, you was working in this part of Moldova, which is now a sort of state within the state. It's unrecognized territory by international community, Transnistria. I mean,
yeah, but this is a different region.
Yeah.
So Moldova has a very complex situation too, in terms of geopolitical issues, because this region, the very southern part, incorporates the Gagauz minority, and this Gagauz minority has on the Moldovan side a sort of autonomous territory. So they have like a small state, but without any political options such as has Transnistria. Where you have an own currency, where the language issue is different, where the whole structure of the de facto state is different. So I think the situation in Moldova is very complicated, because on this small territory you have many ethnic groups, and you have this issue in Transnistria, plus the one in the south, which I am focusing on.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Martin, for this interesting conversation. Today we had a very interesting conversation with Associate Professor Martin Henzelmann, and I wish you luck with your project. I hope we will meet after your trip with your new information, new knowledge, and we will discuss it and talk about this more. And thank you for listening to us, and goodbye.
Goodbye, Martin.
Thank you, goodbye.
It was the podcast PUNKT.UA
which is part of the UNDIPUS project at the University of Greifswald,
with Vadym
and Tinka.
supported by the German Federal Ministry of Education and Research.
Join us on the PUNKT.UA podcast.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.